I don't see the camera, but
Yay, we're live. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee Talk.
Good morning.
I'm Ashley. I am one of the co-founders of the Dyslexia Initiative, and this is Enid, and she is one of our leaders. She runs California and Nevada, and she also happens to have her own business, Silver Linings Education Services. Did I say that? I said it right.
You said it right, yeah.
I always say it right?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Hi, Ashley. Because Ashley's in Texas and I'm in California. So we're so excited to be here. Ashley and I have been talking about doing Coffee Talk for a while. So this is just to just talk about dyslexia and drink our coffee with our awesome mugs that Ashley got, Mama Bear mugs. So can we start with Ashley? Can you introduce Dyslexia Initiative?
Yeah, totally. Gosh, it's been almost a year now that Julie McKinley, Shantae Feldman, and myself decided to band together and create the Dyslexia Initiative. So Shantae and Julie were doing a North Texas parents group and page. And of course I had Dyslexic Houston. And, the three of us, we have a lot in common. We have, our belief system is very much aligned with each other. And our personalities just really gel. We just kind of get each other. So we decided to join together, and it was actually early November. It wasn't October, and we created the Dyslexia Initiative. So in May of this year, we turned it into a nonprofit. And between, July and September, we worked really hard to combine all of our groups and all of our pages into one seamless one page, and we've slowly been launching. It's been very exciting. The last month, we've been launching several several groups. So we have California and Nevada, which you get to run.
Oh, by the way, you have to say Nevada because they get very upset if you say Nevada. Just
Nevada.
FYI, because I didn't know that until I lived in Nevada, but it's good for everyone to know because it truly is very important to the Nevadans. I lived there for 12 years. So, and I would only correct you because nobody really knows, but yeah, so we have Nevada and we have California. And everybody says Nevada who doesn't live in Nevada until, yeah, so.
Yeah, I totally get that. We've got Arkansas, we have Georgia. We have, of course, we have our North Texas parents group. We have a Katy, Texas group. We have a Houston, Texas group. And yesterday, and this is announcement, we launched South Carolina.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and I can't, I'm being a bad person. I'm forgetting New York. We have New York. Can't forget New York. New York's very important. So.
South Carolina is one of my favorite places on earth. I got to visit there one time, so.
I actually get to live in Georgia, but I've never been to South Carolina. Well, no, I take it back. I have been to South Carolina because I've been to Hilton Head.
Okay. Yeah. The Carolinas, little hidden treasure. It was, yeah. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but is that all of them?
I think so. I hope so. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody.
Which is so exciting. And I just have to say, I am so inspired by what the three of you started and what it's become, and I'm so honored to be part of this on this journey with you all. And I think that to jump in, because I just wanted to say it's a journey that I know that for you three, it's really important that everybody is welcome to be on this journey. And the Dyslexia Revolution is about gathering parents that, everybody together that has the same mission, right? So
definitely. Well, it's, really what it's about is, I know that I felt really, really alone when I started this but started my dyslexia journey in 2016. Yeah. When my son hit the wall, I didn't have a clue where to begin. I didn't even know that you could find groups on Facebook. I didn't know any of that. Google was my best friend. And that wasn't an easy, even if you just Google yourself, you can Google yourself to death trying to find resources, especially in your own area. And I hated that feeling. And I didn't want, as my friends began to have children that were dyslexic or, into my journey, they would go, "Oh, did you know that my child's dyslexic too?" or something like that. And, all that we do is school-based services or something like that. And we don't know, we think 504 is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and just
yeah, right.
just various things like that. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more in this world, and we have to get it right. So
yeah, and it can be such a lonely. I think that's what I wanted to kind of point out from what you were just saying is that it's so lonely, and when you first, if you're on this journey and you're just trying to fight for your kids, the mama bear, really truly. I mean, I have to say, I had to fight for my child when she was in 6th grade. And she's now graduating from high school and she's doing so well. So when I was in the throes of the mama bear phase and I was fighting for her, it was just the most trying time of my life because I felt like nobody understood. I felt like people were saying, well, you're just overreacting. And, and so much of it was just lonely and scary. And so I know for me, I love to give hope and say, look, I mean, there is, when you do these things and in this scary phase, you'll get through it. And now to see this child that's going to go out and take on the world and with confidence, which was not the child that we had in 6th grade.
Right.
So I had a child on an IEP with anxiety. So, and now no anxiety and, so yeah, it is that lonely thing. And I didn't have anything as well like this to help me get through it. There weren't support group things. That's why I started the IEP special ed support group page or group. I started it, I think 4 or 5 years ago because there was nothing out there where parents could say, well, what happens if this, happens and stuff. So yeah, I
do think that there's been like a explosion on Facebook, definitely, of dyslexia. I know when I started looking, once I sort of discovered it was on Facebook in 2016 and I started looking on Facebook, there wasn't like that much on Facebook then. Mm-hmm. And over the last 3 years, so much more has been created and propagated. Mm-hmm. I mean, just the groups and the pages have really and truly just exploded on Facebook, which is great.
Yeah.
I know that for me, what is a very personal mission for me is I've learned so much, but it's been such a trial and error kind of thing too.
Right.
I know that, and it's so confusing. I was just talking to a friend of mine last night named Monica, and she is on the brink of beginning this journey. Mm. And so we talked for an hour and a half, and she, I think she's the first.
Because you're so generous with your time. So,
well, thank you. But so I'm sitting in front of her, and we're talking, and we're friends to begin with, and I think she's the first person I've talked to kind of on the brink of this journey where she never like faltered. She wasn't a complete deer in headlights. And I stopped her. She was asking me a question and I stopped at one point and I went, "Don't let me overwhelm you." Mm-hmm. And she said, "You're not overwhelming me." And I said, "That's because of what you do for a living. So you're going to take this punch and you're just going to absorb it and you're going to keep rolling with it." But a lot of people get really overwhelmed by this. And she said something really powerful, which is true for everybody. And she looked at me and she said, "This is something that has its own distinct language." And I said,
"Oh my gosh, it's so true. I'm in the field and I can't keep up with the acronyms."
I know. And I'm not an acronym person. And I work in an industry, and my prior industry is like the most acronym heavy industries in the world. And I'm not an acronym person, but, I said, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a world that completely has its own language, and you have to learn that." I can't talk. You have to learn language. With that, I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah. I know. You have to learn the language while you're learning about the system, while you're learning about the actual, the actual dyslexia. So yeah, it's definitely a lot to learn.
Yeah. So, and you can't, and I think that some people go into this sort of thinking that you can learn it quickly or overnight sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have a library of books I haven't read.
I've been studying it for 20 years and I still have things I need to learn. Seriously. It is. Well, I mean, I want to kind of jump in here too, because I really want people to think about something about dyslexia differently. So if you look up, and we'll post this on Dyslexia Initiative after this talk, but if you look up the 20 traits of highly creative people,
Mm-hmm.
it mirrors dyslexia and ADHD. So if we think of individuals with dyslexia as highly creative,
Mm-hmm.
It's a different way of thinking about it. And, there's a lot of things that come along with that too, understanding it's not as simple as it's difficult to read. I mean, I believe that dyslexia is a form of gifted. And I feel like it's a form of gifted and it's a form of a highly creative mind. So it's quite complex, to understand the whole child and not just the difficulties that the child has.
And I think you're so right about that, just because, I know that over the 4 years that we've been doing this now, because it was really sort of a startling thing to me. I keep saying I've only been doing this for 3 years. And it's like when my mom looks at me and she says, you know that you've been saying your dog's 4 years old for like 5 years.
I do the same thing.
So I stopped and I
very relative. Yeah.
thought about it, and I was like, okay, actually, because we started it really early in 2016, so that's an entire year. 2017 is an entire year. So we're really like 4 years into this journey at this point. And just the evolution of my own child and watching that, especially as we do remediation and like how he sort of changes and how his creativity changes. And then, of course, because he's a child, today he's interested in this, tomorrow he's interested in that.
Yeah.
God, the night before last, he taped a "Are you ready to be a gamer?" poster on his bedroom door without my knowledge. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my God. Mine used to write contracts. So if I had, if I gave her a consequence, so let's say the consequence was I am going to take away, at that point it was a Kindle Fire. So this is the consequence, you will lose your Kindle Fire. So I found a contract the other day that she had written me, which was, and it was written like a contract, and she was 7, and it was like a date. If Natalie once again does this, then the mom can take away the Kindle Fire. And then she had me sign it and date it. And I'm like, how does she even know, number one, what a contract is? And number two, it was her way of getting around the consequence. I mean, the creativity was just like, yeah. I know. And I just found it the other day, and it was like, oh my gosh, I remember the contract phase. And she kept writing these contracts as if to get around. And sometimes it worked because I was so impressed with her creativity that I would just, yeah.
Oh my God, that's so your daughter.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. And that's why I used to say you need to be a lawyer when you grow up. Like, seriously, yeah. So, the creativity, and we can't stifle that creativity, right? So if we say, no, you have to fit into this box and you have to do things a certain way and you are this or you are that and you struggle. Mm-hmm. No, because then they're like, wait a minute, I'm not going to discover that I'm this highly creative person. So right. Believe me, I've had lots of, that child has kept me laughing and challenged me though, because I never can predict. I can't predict a contract from a 7-year-old child.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I
know, right?
I love you, but that's just so the antithesis of you.
I know, right? Oh, and believe me, and this is the same child that when she was 4 and we were asking her to do a few things for us, she looked up at her father and said, Dad, I'm 4. You're expecting a lot from me. I mean, so this is a child who, this is a demonstration of these gifted children and their creative brains. But I have to say, this is a child who we had to pull out of public education for 6, 7th, and 8th because they couldn't educate her. We did different sorts of online learning, homeschooling, which you can't homeschool a child like that. You can't. And so when people feel like they need to homeschool their child, but they feel like, I can't homeschool this child, I totally get it. There's some children who just can't be homeschooled. Yeah. So we found alternatives. This child will not graduate with a high grade point average because school failed her. So she will go on to do great things, but school we didn't force high grades. She's gonna graduate. We're gonna celebrate, but she's brilliant. So that's the point, so we have focused on the creativity. We have focused on getting her all the support she needs to feel successful and to be confident without focusing too much on, you need to succeed at this level of getting good grades and stuff. But yeah, it's been a challenge. Yeah.
But I think that that's important, though, is exactly what you just said. It's, I know I've said this a lot in my blog, and I don't know how many people know I actually have my own blog.
I don't think a lot of people do know that's your blog. Tell them about your blog, because your blog is brilliant.
Oh, thank you. So my blog is A Mom's Journey, My Dyslexic Life, but that's just where I write our journey. So this is my son and myself, and this is my advocacy for him, my realizations, my questions, my anger, my ponderings. It's, it's just me sort of pouring all that out.
Say that you don't say.
Yeah, it's a lot of things that I don't say. I wrote one specifically for you that you asked me to write after you did some advocacy work for me.
I did. I go into IEPs and I say, how do you stay in such control when you're in IEPs? Because sometimes you want to say stuff, and you can't. And so, yeah, she wrote a brilliant piece about what I say, but what I really want to say.
And, like I said, Mom and Dad, please don't read it because it's got some curse words in it. But
there's time for that, for sure. And I have to say, on that note, the school districts, we all know, are not holding the bar high for these kids. So really important point, and I just have to point it out because I'm seeing it everywhere. These kids are being tested with low IQs. These are not low IQ kids. Anyone who knows their kid knows this doesn't fit. We're talking borderline mentally retarded IQs. When we're talking a 75, and I know the kid is at a 95 to 105, there's an issue. And each time that we have a school district IQ, it comes and we do an IEE, it comes back 20 to 30 points higher every time. So these kids are getting low IQs in the schools. And if we're not paying attention, this is the important part. We can only expect from a child what they can do. So if a child comes out with a low IQ, like legally, morally, whatever, ethically, you can only, if this kid has a 75 IQ, you expect 75 performance. So it's if they have an 85 IQ, you expect 85 performance. So these kids are coming out between 75 and 85 range. So they're like, they're doing the best they can. Well, no, because if they actually had a valid IQ that was higher, we'd say, oh, we expect more from them. So this is so that's an issue right now that's huge because these kids, they're being failed in that their expectations are way down here. We're not expecting a whole lot.
Yeah, and I should say that on the Dyslexia Initiative, there's a blog there as well. And I wrote a piece specifically there called, What Does 80% Mean?
That's so important. Please read that blog because that is parents. I'm going into IEPs where they're writing 60%, 70% for these kids. And that's not, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've got like an art on Monday and I haven't looked at the draft yet. That's what I get to do for the rest of the day. Read the draft IEP and do my stuff. But
see, that's a fun Saturday.
I really know how to party. So there might be a couple of bottles of wine with that.
To get through that, maybe.
But so I was reading the existing art, and you know how disastrous the last art meeting actually was. And one of the goals, and you remember too, that they didn't give me the last copy of the IEP. They read it to me. Not cool. So I was looking at it, and one of the goals is set at 70%. That's the max that they want to go to. And I'm like, my child has an IQ of 117 and you want to set a benchmark at 70%. That's a C, borderline D. And, you know, that's just an example of one of the things that we hope to be able to really help parents understand and educate. That's part of why we exist. And it's little details like that is just so important. And it's understanding that in your own advocacy for your own child. You know, and you and I and all of the other advocates out there, we always recommend that you don't IEP alone. You try to take an advocate with you.
Even if it's just a friend.
You're right.
Because not everybody has, you know, the ability to bring an advocate. And so you can bring a friend and say it's an advocate, you know. Yeah, right. I mean, it is an advocate, right? So just bring somebody, you know, bring your best friend, the one who's going to have your back and say, wait a minute, that doesn't quite sound right. So that you don't feel alone in the IEP, you know, because I know a lot of people feel like, well, I can't hire an advocate or I don't have anyone I can go to. Just bring a friend or make sure you don't go it alone if you can, you know. I mean, I know sometimes it's hard with scheduling and not everybody can do that, you know. And for those who can't, like, my heart goes out to you that, you know, so it's just, it's a tough one, but definitely.
Right. And I recommend taking a friend that's really good at
listening,
sort of reading people.
Yeah.
Understanding, you know, if you've got a friend that's, you know, really good at strategy, I recommend that friend. The one time I took a friend that actually didn't know anything about the dyslexia world. She's a good friend of mine. I used to work with her in the oil and gas industry. And she was actually my boss at one point, but she's a brilliant, I'm going to say the word wrong. In fact, I'm not even going to try to say the word because I can't figure out the conjugation of the word. She's brilliant at strategy. No, I was going to say something like strategician but. You know.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But she's brilliant at strategy and she's really, really good at reading people. And she was like, you don't need me for strategy, but I can help you read the room.
I love it. That's powerful.
Yeah. And so, and before we went in, she was like, what are your main points? And so I told her like my 3 to 5 like main points. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, as I was sitting there, I'm doing my best to focus on trying to read everybody in the room. But while I do that, I also, as an individual person is talking, I try to focus on that individual person. And as they say something that's like a, you know, shocking kind of a statement, that's when I try to like look around the room and sort of take the pulse. This was a weird meeting. It wasn't an IEP meeting. It was a different kind of a meeting. And so I really needed her there to help me read the room. Mm-hmm. Because with the kind of dialogue that we were having, I was having to spend too much time focused on the person that was talking. Mm-hmm. And so it's so helpful to me to have her scanning everybody in the room and and just reading their expressions, their faces, their body language, and all of that jazz.
Keep going. I want to say
no, I was done.
It wasn't until, I know, thank you. You have to let me know because it's a common trait of people with ADHD or highly creative minds is that we interrupt. And we don't interrupt because we are rude. We interrupt because we lose our thoughts quickly and we have a lot to say. So you will always rein me in and like, wait, I'm not done talking. So yeah, that's what I love about this coffee talk. We can just, but what I wanted to say is that I had advocated for quite a while because I'd worked in the schools for 17 years and wearing many, many different hats. And so I felt confident to advocate for parents. And it was for me about the law and about maybe educating people along the way. Mm-hmm. Until I met you. And everything changed. And let me explain why. Because Ashley, no, seriously, and this is really important, I think, to share, because it wasn't until Ashley and I met and I sat in on an IEP where I was there to be her advocate.
That was a disastrous IEP.
Well, I hope not because of me. No.
No, it wasn't because of you. Disastrous IEP.
What was beautiful was that watching her, and Ashley's a negotiator. So watching Ashley use it, so I learned so much in that meeting. I said, I want to learn from you. So we've been, learning from each other, which is a beautiful thing. And in the process, she's taught me two very important things that I want to share. Number one, you are not there to educate people when you're advocating. There are times to educate people, it's not then. And I just so want to educate people, but you're not going to be as effective.
Correct.
That was important.
Because they're not going to listen. They are not there.
No, they're not. It's such a good point and so the second point, which goes right on what you just said, is this is a negotiation. This is not a who knows the law better than the other person. This is not a I'm coming in to tell you how this is going to be. This is a very careful negotiation. And when I realized that, everything changed in my advocacy. It's much more efficient. It's much more direct and to the point. It's much more. So I think understanding that advocacy is a negotiation takes away some of the emotional piece, because now you have, and if you understand that there can be strategy, unfortunately, it shouldn't be a negotiation when we're dealing with our children. It should be we come to the table and everybody has the best intentions at heart and we're all doing best by the kids. Unfortunately,
we're not in Wonderland.
Public education, right? A public education is a business. It's a business. Now, but it's a business. It's paid by taxpayers, so it should be run in a way that benefits the taxpayers. However, it's a business. Right. So they're in constant negotiation, not wanting to spend their money. So if we come at it in terms of understanding that this is a negotiation with money on the table and we are the smarter negotiators, we will prevail. Right. So I wanted to really express that, because I just think, I don't know. And it was great because I met an advocate who went through an advocate training, and she said that one of the books they had to read was Negotiation Genius or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I love that they are teaching that in the advocacy programs, because that's what it's all about. Yeah. So.
Right. And I think another I remember talking to you around that, the time of that advocacy meeting, and the approach that I took to the IEP document, the ARD document, and the fact
we just have to real quick with acronyms, just so everybody knows. Texas, they call them ARDs.
ARD.
Everywhere else we call them IEPs. Sorry, just so people, those crazy acronyms.
I know, and there's so many acronyms, and what drives me nuts is they vary by state.
Yeah, I know. That's why I had to throw it out there, because there's ARDs in Texas, there's IEPs. But yeah, no, it just helps to kind of,
Yeah. But regardless of where you are, it's the same, or not identically the same, but it's a roughly similar document. Yeah. But regardless, it's based on IDEA, which is a federal law. The federal law stipulates the terms and conditions that must be adhered to within the contract.
Contract. See, people need to realize too that it's a contract.
Correct. Of the contract that is created in whatever you want to call the meeting, whether it's an ARD, an IEP, or God knows what call it, and potentially other places as well. It is a contract. And so I know, at least with my style, and it really threw my district for a curveball, is because I treated it like a contract. Mm-hmm. So I have done contracts my entire career. I'm a strategy. I do strategy and negotiation for a living. And so because you saw what I did right after I did it. So I took that entire contract and I converted it to Word, and I turned on track changes and I marked it up.
Oh yeah.
I made corrections and I made comments, and I would write things like, I disagree with this and I disagree with this based on these facts and this section of IDEA. And you've misspelled parents, and you've,
I love it. Well, and is there any way you could take that document and remove any information and share that? Because I think that would really help parents to see how you can do that.
I can try. It's such a
it's a lot to ask you live, put you on the spot like that. But yeah, something like that. But maybe we can create something like that together to show parents how, there is like a way. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been going on for about 34 minutes, and I kind of wanted to hit on a couple of things, because we swore to each other we wouldn't go too terribly long. So,
right.
But you said something earlier that I kind of wanted to circle back around to, when you were talking about, how your daughter isn't going to graduate with, the highest GPA out of everybody in her class, but she is going to graduate and you are going to celebrate that. Yeah. And I know that you and I have talked a lot, and I've written about it in my blog, and I've kind of created some memes on the Dyslexia Initiative. But we just had a comment that somebody has a feeling that they definitely don't misspell my child's name, and I can say, no, they don't misspell my child's name, but they did misspell parents.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But so what I tell my son all of the time, and I share this as often as I can, is, as it's helpful when we're like driving to or past the school or something. But, I point to the school and I'm constantly telling him, I'm like, they don't get to define you.
I love it. Mm-hmm.
This is such a short amount of time in your life. And when you're a kid, school is everything.
Oh my gosh. And the teacher liking you and you performing, and all of that means a lot. Mm-hmm.
It does. And it's designed to be a pretty competitive environment. And,
mm-hmm.
Everybody's sort of pitted against each other, and you have expectations, and you get in trouble if you don't live up to those expectations. And it's a thing, it's a world, but it's a human construct. And, I'm 45 years old. I'm about to turn 46. School was so long ago. And the further I get away from that, the more I realize what a brief time of my life that actually was. And I know that, to my son, I'm a really old, I'm an old lady. So,
well, yeah.
But, and it's hard for him to understand at his age, but I hope if I just keep saying it to him over and over and over through the years, that eventually he's going to buy into it, and he's actually going to believe me. But I just keep going, this place and these people don't get to define you. They have such incredible power over your life, but the issue is you can't give them that power. And at the end of the day, I don't get to define him either. Right. He gets to define himself, and we have to set our children free, I think, in that kind of an aspect, because it is such a hard, dominating period of your life. And how many of us still carry the demon or the burden or whatever you want to call it of what somebody in that stage of our life told us that we could or couldn't be. I was bad at math. And it wasn't until I had a college professor who pulled me aside one day and said, "Let me tell you why you are bad at math."
Because you think you're bad at math.
Right. Because I think I'm bad at math.
Right.
I'm not bad at math. He figured out how I learned math, but I was 21.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's so important that you're bringing this up for our kids today, because as someone who lived with dyslexia as a child, I remember like it was yesterday when I did the Father's Day plate in kindergarten. I mean, I almost want to cry. Like, it's crazy because this stays with you. So the kindergarten plate, I wrote, because I couldn't write Happy Father's Day. That was too much, right? So I said, I love you, Dad, but it really said, I love you, Bab. And so they hung the plate on the wall, and my family didn't mean to be mean, right? But they would joke. They'd be like, "Oh, I love you, Bab." And then at school, everything, it stays with you, and no one intends to, when, or when the teacher says, you work a little harder, or you just have to do this, or why aren't you doing that? Or, it's like, and you're doing the best you can. Those people are so well-meaning. So I want to say that too, because the people who are trying to help the kids who don't know better really think, because when you see a smart kid who isn't performing at the level they are, you just think they're lazy, right? Yeah. And there are some lazy kids, believe me, because gifted kids take the path of least resistance, right? So I guess,
because why wouldn't you?
Right? Because really smart ones know how to get around things in the easy way. So it's a little lazy, but it doesn't mean, right? But it doesn't mean when you're in school and you're trying your very best that you're being lazy.
Right.
So I'm on some adult dyslexic groups, and it just breaks my heart how much that stays with you, you know. And I know we have to wrap this up, but one last little statistic that I'm going to like say about that is they did a study where they found that dyslexics at the adult level who've been through school, have the same level of shame as incest survivors. So I know that's like hard to hear, but it's real. Like people I've talked to as adults who say, you know, that they were put in the, you know, they felt retarded. They felt, you know, they felt like they couldn't learn, you know, and that still stays with them, you know, today. So that's why it's so important what you're saying, and why it's so important that we tell kids this doesn't define you. School doesn't define you. You know, this may be hard, but it's one thing that's hard, you know. One last thing, I know, because we got to go. But I had a student one time and she was crying because she couldn't read. And I said, but you can probably jump rope, right? And she said, yeah, like really well. And I was like, really good. And I was like, okay, tomorrow or next time I see you, we're going into the gym and we're going to jump rope. I can't even make the jump rope go under my feet one time. Like everyone can jump rope, but I literally cannot jump rope. And the little girl kept saying, Miss Webb, you can do it. You just have to try a little harder. And I'm like, you don't understand. I can't jump rope. But then we tried 3 times or like a bunch of times. I finally got one loop under. From that day on, that girl believed she could read because she's like, if Miss Webb can get that rope under her feet. So I think it's important too, we show kids that we all have things that are hard for us and we all struggle, and that struggle does not define them. So
yeah. And I know that that's what really helps you connect with your students, is because you're dyslexic yourself.
Yeah.
So, you know, they love the fact that they're learning from somebody who really understands what they're going through. So that's definitely a very special thing that you offer your kids. So
whoever would have thought my worst struggle would have become an asset.
I know.
Right.
But, you know, I think that speaks so much, not just to your resiliency. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Resiliency, but to how truly resilient our kids are capable of being and are.
Yeah, it's tenacity. We have tenacity like no one. And the reason why we have tenacity is because we had to get through the public education system.
This is true. And surviving it is just, yeah. We're not together. So
on that note, right? Are we supposed to end? I know we could talk all day on here.
We could talk all day. So we are going to wrap up. And what I wanted to say is, so this is the first session of Coffee Talk. And our point today was just sort of to introduce the Dyslexia Initiative and a little bit of who we are and what we are and why we are and all that kind of, you know, fun stuff. But if you have specific questions, specific topics that you would like us to discuss, please, you can PM us, you can comment on our next Coffee Talk or this particular event itself. We have a list of topics that we're going to discuss. We have other people that we're going to bring on and talk to. Soccer season, lacrosse season, football season is kind of wrapping up for everybody. And so I know Julie and Shantae both really want to come on too. Sports season is kind of killing all of us right now. Fortunately, we have soccer games on Fridays, not Saturdays. But we've got a lot that we're going to talk about, and we're going to so the other sessions will typically be more focused on a very specific topic. So we're looking forward to rolling those out, and thank you so much for being here. And I hope that you were drinking your coffee and sitting
we'll post that thing about, oh yeah. I was going to say, we'll post that thing about highly creative people too. So I can see that.
Yes, it's definitely very important. So thank you all for being here. And I hope that you enjoy your weekend.
Have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful day.